US President Joe Biden vows to hunt down and punish those responsible for the deadly Kabul attack. The Islamic State affiliate ISIS-K claiming that it is behind the suicide blast, which killed more than 13 US service members and dozens of Afghans. President Biden said the US will move forward with evacuations, but made it clear that the nation will neither forgive nor forget.
We will not be deterred by terrorists. We will not let them stop our mission. We will continue the evacuation. I've also ordered my commanders to develop operational plans to strike ISIS-K assets, leadership, and facilities. We will respond with force and precision at our time, at the place we choose, in a moment of our choosing.
All right, let's take a closer look at ISIS-K. CNN's Jumana Karachi joins me now from Istanbul. She's extensively covered the rise and fall of ISIS in Iraq. So, Joe, ISIS-K carried out some brutal, devastating attacks in the past. We're talking about schoolgirls, maternity hospitals and so on. What do we know about their capabilities in Afghanistan at the moment?
Well, Michael, I mean, they have been a major threat, according to U.S. officials in the country. They have been the target of military operations, counterterrorism operations in the country. And as you mentioned, we've seen those devastating attacks since 2016. And also in recent months, they have shown the ability to choose their targets, carry out the attacks whenever and however they want, Michael. They have remained a serious threat in the country. Now, when it comes to their numbers, there's all sorts of estimates, something around 1,000 to 1,500. But what has really concerned officials, and we've heard this from U.S. military officials also in recent days, as well as President Biden, these prison breaks that you saw in Afghanistan as the Taliban swept across the country, hundreds of ISIS prisoners who were released from these prisons and who are believed to have joined the ranks of these groups, really raising concerns about their ability to carry out more of these devastating attacks. I think what is very interesting, Michael, here is, of course, that, if you look at Thursday's attack, this was, again, what would be described as a complex, coordinated attack, but also a target of opportunity. You had these large crowds. You and I have covered these sort of bombings in the past. Different groups, whether it's ISIS or others, have carried out very similar attacks. It doesn't take much to inflict maximum damage, maximum casualties, the maximum horror that we saw unfold on Thursday by infiltrating these large crowds. I think one thing to keep an eye on, what U.S. officials might say in the coming hours, coming days about their bomb-making abilities, what sort of forensics is going to come out of this investigation in terms of the explosive used, the device that was used. Very important to keep an eye on. Something that is also very concerning, Michael, I found in that claim of responsibility by that group, by ISIS-K, they say that not only were they targeting U.S. military service members, they were also targeting what they described as the collaborators, the spies, the translators who worked with the Americans, really, again, underscoring the kind of risks America's allies and partners are facing right now with the fears that they're going to be left behind, Michael.
Yes, many most certainly will. Jumana Karachi, appreciate it. Thanks so much. So if ISIS-K is behind the airport attack, as it claims, what was the group hoping to accomplish? To discuss all of this, Sajan Gohel joins me now from London. He's the International Security Director for the Asia Pacific Foundation and an expert on terrorism. Good to have you with us. We've heard the US President and others say that, ISIS-K is a sworn enemy of the Taliban. But you write about how the relationship is more murky than that, and that in many ways are intertwined.
Indeed, Michael. There are many shades of grey between ISIS-K and the Taliban. They will fight and kill each other on one day, and they will potentially then cooperate the next day for strategic reasons, mutual interest, convergence, such as, for example, trying to force Western troops out of Afghanistan. And you also have to remember that ISIS-K are made up of Pashtuns from both Pakistan and Afghanistan. There are ethnic, tribal clan lineages with the Taliban. Some ISIS fighters are married to Taliban fighters' families and vice versa. So it is a much more murkier nexus than perhaps looking at it from a black and white perspective.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I guess when it comes to this attack, tactically, it achieves exactly what ISIS likes to do, American casualties primarily, but also chaos on the ground. What else might ISIS-K be looking to do, and what does this attack suggest about its reach and capability in Afghanistan?
Well, if we look at some of the attacks that they have carried out over the last year, you mentioned the attack on the maternity ward. They murdered women who were in the process of giving birth. They targeted a girls' school, and dozens of young children were murdered. And of course, now this very awful, horrific attack at the airport. It's about power, it's about control and intimidation. They want to show the Afghans that they are there, that they have a stake in Afghanistan's very dystopian future now that the West is leaving, and that they are going to compete with the Taliban for control of the country. And unfortunately, the Afghan people are sandwiched now between the Taliban on one side and ISIS-K on the other side.
Yeah, pick a choice between who is more brutal. I wanted to ask you this too, because the US pounded ISIS-K, relentlessly for a while there, and they sort of went quiet. How much of an impact did the Taliban's release of ISIS prisoners during their sweep across the country have on ISIS-K's operating strength?
Well, certainly ISIS-K's ability to operate has been enhanced and increased after the Taliban freed dozens of their prisoners, if not hundreds, from various jails across Afghanistan as the Taliban was sweeping across Afghanistan. There are also ISIS-K fighters that have now emerged from the woodwork that were based in Pakistan. And therein lies another problem, is the fact that it wasn't just the Taliban that were lying low in Pakistan, but ISIS-K fighters too. And then questions still remain about Pakistan's role in all of this, because they haven't just aided and abetted the Taliban in the past, but possibly ISIS-K for their own strategic reasons, because they've had this aspect of strategic depth for Afghanistan. And again, the concern is that what role will Pakistan play in Afghanistan's future, especially vis-a-vis all these groups, when you've got Imran Khan's government wanting to try and get international recognition and legitimization for the Taliban. But how can one do that when they retain these odd ties with all these different terrorist groups who are murdering civilians? And also, we are looking at the death of 13 US Marines who are trying to save lives in Afghanistan.
Yeah, it's a complex neighbourhood, that's for sure. I wish we had more time. Sergeant Gohel, I really appreciate the analysis.